Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Literary Distraction with me, Hazel Gaynor, here in Ireland. I hope you're all doing well and that you're managing to keep smiling, keep reading, keep some sort of sanity in this lockdown situation that we're still in. I know it's not easy. It's the longer it goes on, the harder it gets for all of us. So hopefully this will help just distract you for a few minutes while I talk about my next book. This week we are going to be talking about fairies and the Cottingley Secret. So again, two different covers for this book. This is the USA Canada edition of the book, and this is the edition that was released in the UK and Ireland and Australia and New Zealand. So both gorgeous covers. I actually love the sort of feel of the magic from both of these covers because this is the most amazing true story that inspired me to write The Cottingley Secret. And it all started with this amazing photograph. This was taken in 1917 in the Yorkshire village of Cottingley. And as a Yorkshire lass, I really clearly remember this photograph and a couple of the others. There were four very famous photographs of the so-called Cottingley fairies. There was actually a fifth taken as well, which I talk about in the book. This little girl is Frances Griffiths, and she and her cousin Elsie created what became, and possibly still is, one of the greatest hoaxes of all time, when they alleged to have seen and photographed fairies at the bottom of the garden in a beck, which is a small stream in Cottingley. And the book explores where I came to when I thought about these photographs again as an adult. Why did they take these photographs? Were the fairies really there in their imaginations, or were they really trying to trick everybody? What was the reason for them to take the photographs? So I tell the story of this huge hoax, as it turned out, from the point of view of Frances and her experience, I suppose, of being a young girl and why she and Elsie created this photographic series of fairies. And it's absolutely fascinating because Frances and Elsie maintained that these were authentic photographs of fairies until they were both much, much older. So this went on, photographs taken in 1917, this went on into the 1980s when I was a sort of young teenager. And I think that's when I remember seeing these photographs, because they came back into the public conscience because it was suddenly revealed that it had all been an enormous hoax. And both Elsie and Frances, as older women, talked about that. Although Frances is really fascinating because she claimed that actually one of the photographs wasn't staged and it really did show actual fairies, and that she did see fairies throughout her life. And what a fascinating concept for a book. So as I said, this is a story I'd known sort of as part of local Yorkshire folklore since I was a young girl. And when I was thinking about ideas for the novel I was going to write at the time, it was actually my agent who suggested, she said, "Do you know much about the Cottingley fairies?" And it was one of those goosebump moments. And I thought, well, yes, I know a lot. Well, I didn't know as much as I thought I did, as it turned out, but I definitely knew about them in those photographs. As I say, this one in particular was so iconic. So I was fascinated to explore the why behind those photographs. And what's a really important and interesting part of this story, the reason those photographs became public, the reason that we know about them, was really it was just started as a bit of a family joke between the girls and their parents, was that they came into the hands of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries. And he was a really interesting man. He was very interested in the occult and in fairy life. And he was writing, as it turned out, he was writing an article for a magazine called The Strand magazine in and around the time when these photographs fell into his hands. So here was photographic evidence to support his belief that there really were fairy folk living among us in and out of a different realm. And he had these photographs taken by these two young girls sort of messing about by the bottom of the river in Yorkshire. He had them analysed by photographic experts at the likes of Kodak, who maintained that yes, they were authentic and that there were details within the photographs that couldn't possibly have been faked. So the girls were really quite horrified when this very well educated, very influential, well regarded man said, yes, these are real fairies, and they kind of had to go along with the story. So that's a little bit of background to that amazing photograph. And as I say, there were really 4 photographs that became famous at the time. And my retelling of those events in the Cottingley Secret takes this photograph in particular and links the past of this era to the present in Ireland. Obviously, using the 2 locations in my life where I grew up in Yorkshire and where I've lived for the last 20 years in Ireland. And obviously, we all associate Ireland with fairy folklore, with the little people, with leprechauns. So it seemed really fitting for lots of reasons for me to set part of the story back in 1917 and the years from there, and Elsie and Francis taking these famous photographs, and current day Ireland, where this photograph has a particular significance to a young woman, Olivia Kavanagh, who inherits a bookshop in a seaside town in North County Dublin called Howth, which is a place I adore and have spent many, many, many happy days there. So this fictional bookshop which Olivia inherits unlocks the mystery of this photograph that she, like me, has known all her life, but doesn't quite understand why or what the significance of it is. So there's a real mystery weaved through the book. The bookshop itself is quite magical. There's a lot of, I suppose, my own love of books that comes through that part of the story, and that was really fun to write, as well as obviously stepping into the mind of a young girl back in the era of the Great War and what might have led her and her cousin to create this fabulous hoax. And then obviously, as I say, how that became something much bigger than them and how it affected their lives. And what was so interesting, when I was researching this story, I went to the archives of where the Cottingley photographs, the original glass plates. These were obviously taken on very old cameras. They're held in a library in Leeds in Yorkshire. So I spent a couple of hours looking through the original photographs and original correspondence written between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and between Elsie and Francis and him and their parents, which was fascinating. And I also, purely by accident, part of my research was to gather lots of books that have been written about the Cottingley fairy hoax. And one of them led me to email somebody who had a website, and I explained I was researching the event for a novel. And the reply that came back was amazing. It was from a lady called Christine, who turned out to be the daughter of Francis, and she lived in Belfast and was very excited to hear that I was writing a book about her mother and the events surrounding the photographs, and would I like to meet? So I had a couple of meetings with Christine up in Belfast, and couldn't have been more welcoming or more helpful. She gave me access to some of her mother's own writings about that period of her life and how it affected her in both a positive and negative way. And it really helped me to understand who Frances was and what was happening in and around that series of photographs. So it was a really extraordinary circumstance and coincidence that led me to meet Christine and really helped me to write the book. So that's a little bit of background to writing the Cottingley Secret. It really, as I say, this is the UK Ireland edition. It was really such an amazing book to write. It really did feel quite magical, and I had this photograph of Frances and her fairies beside me on the desk as I wrote, and I really felt that she was keeping an eye on me and maybe sending the little people to help. And just to make sure I did her story justice, to really try and capture that sense of childhood innocence and magic, and the magic we get from books as well through Olivia's story. I've had such a great response from readers. A lot of people have found The Secret at a point in their life when they really felt they needed that pure escapism of magic, of something like this, and the possibility of fairies at the bottom of the garden. And interestingly, since this whole pandemic has happened, I've also had messages from readers saying they've just discovered the book and it's been pure joy, the real sense of magic they need right now. So maybe it could be a good book to read whilst we're going through this strange time. So I hope those of you who haven't ever heard of the Cottingley fairies are now intrigued and want to go and find out more. The American-Canadian edition of the book in particular has the photographs included. They're actually included at the back, so you can see the photographs. They're all quite widely available. If you Google Cottingley fairies, you'll see the photographs. But maybe have a read of the story first and then go and have a look and see what the girls were up to. So yeah, pure fun and a little bit of magic that perhaps we need right now. So of course there'll be a copy of the Cottingley Secret for me to give away. So if you'd like to be considered for this week's giveaway, just leave a comment at the bottom of the video and I'll pick a winner at random by the end of the week. Maybe let me know. Have you ever encountered fairies? I've had readers contact me to tell me they have. Do you have any connection to Cottingley, to the fairies? I've had readers contact me to say they'd read the book and the Cottingley house that Elsie and Frances lived in and the stream at the back of the garden is literally up the road from them. So I'd love to hear from you if you have any connection to Cottingley, if you've had any experience with fairies. I think we could all do with a little magic right now. So leave a message at the bottom and I'll have fun reading through all of them and I'll pick a winner at some point before the end of the week. So there you go, fairies for a Wednesday afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed listening to that and thank you again for all your lovely comments. It's really nice for me to know that people are watching and enjoying this little bit of, as I say, distraction for a few minutes once a week. And I'll be back next week to talk to you about, let me get it right, I think it should be The Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter, which is another amazing story that's come with me from my childhood. We're going for lighthouses and storms and dramatic events and incredibly brave young women. So that's a really great one for me to talk about next week. So for now, me and the fairies will wish you goodbye. Stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next week. Bye.